Well, the senator from Arizona's description of the facts is just extraordinary for it being a fact-free zone. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac never originated a single loan. They certainly are participants in what went on here, but the problem was caused by this notion of, quote, deregulation. And of course, there is no such thing as deregulation. Everything has rules. Think about baseball, which is a trivial, if fun, activity. Baseball regulates how many stitches are on the baseball. And all deregulation has meant for the last 30 years is new rules that favor those with the most money. Well, the rules that were set up encouraged bad lending practices, and most importantly, they separated risk from responsibility. You're always hearing about risk and reward being tied together, but they separated risk from responsibility, because if you're a bank and you make a loan and you have to hold that loan or some of your loans in your portfolio, you're going to be very careful about vetting the borrower to make sure you'll get back the principal and the interest. But if you can package a loan, securitize it, and then sell it to places like the pension funds that you and I support with our tax dollars for public employees, then what do you care if the loan goes bad, especially if you get big fees, and especially if the more toxic the loan is, the less likely it is to be repaid, the bigger your fees. That's what deregulation has meant, and that's what's brought us to this pass.
I wanted to ask you about a comment of McCain's in the debate. He, last night, unveiled what he called a new plan for the Treasury to buy up distressed mortgages to help struggling homeowners.
As President of the United States, Alan, I would order the Secretary of the Treasury to immediately buy up the bad home loan mortgages in America and renegotiate at the new value of those homes, at the diminished value of those homes, and let people be able to make those payments and stay in their homes. Is it expensive? Yes.
That was the Arizona Senator John McCain talking about his proposal. Now, the Obama campaign later said McCain's plan is already in the bailout approved by Congress and that Obama's already proposed it. He said McCain's credibility on addressing the economy is undermined by his endorsement of Bush administration tax cuts. David K. Johnston, your response.
Well, first of all, we have an enormous problem that is not going to be solved by the government. What you're seeing right now is politicians taking your money and redistributing it upward. You know, our whole national myth is that we take from those with a lot and give to those down below. That's not what goes on. That's what my books have shown from the official government data. This is a transfer of wealth and income, 5% of the year's economy, to essentially wealthy bankers and to some degree customers of theirs. A study done just recently of 42 banking crises around the world over the last 37 years show that these things don't work. And the government is not big enough to solve this problem. These assets that were artificially inflated, the selling of mortgages for 125% of the value of a house, the issuing of car loans where someone walks in and wants to buy a $40,000 SUV and they walk out with a $25,000 in their pocket because they got a $65,000 loan, is at the core of this problem. We are going to have to sustain these losses. These assets are going to have to fall back down in price. It's going to be an awful, painful process. The senator's idea here, by the way, is striking because, both senators, because while they both talk about market capitalism, what they are describing is corporate socialism.
Did you oppose the bailout, David K. Johnston?
I'm not opposed to the bailout per se. I'm not saying government shouldn't do anything. But here's the thing to ask yourself. We were told the problem is the credit markets are freezing up because those who have cash to place are not at all confident they will get their money back, even if it's only loaned out for one night. So we approved this $700 billion bailout package. When are they going to start spending the money? After the elections. Now, what does that do about overnight lending and short-term lending? Absolutely nothing. That's not what this was about. This was a Goldman Sachs plan by the former head of Goldman Sachs to first and foremost take care of the people on Wall Street. There are other solutions. There's a whole slew of economists who have proposed different solutions out there. One of them is we can create a temporary new section of the bankruptcy code. People can go into the bankruptcy court, Bankruptcy courts are practical courts. They are interested in clearing the decks and moving people forward and get a ruling. We're going to rewrite your mortgage, or too bad, you're going to be foreclosed on. There's no consideration, by the way, being given here to small landlords. A lot of mom and pop landlords got sucked into these loans. And if they are kept out of the process, it means renters are going to be evicted, renters who had nothing to do with this. We can inject liquidity into the system, which you're seeing the government doing, and the implication of that is inflation. We didn't discuss options. That's what troubles me, is Congress only heard from the advocates of this plan. They took no testimony from anybody else, only from the two principal advocates of this plan.
What did you think of the media coverage of all of this, David K. Johnston?
Awful. Absolutely awful. And I have been at sites for journalists citing this. You had flat-out falsehoods open the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric and the Nightly News on NBC with Brian Williams Monday a week ago when the stock market fell. Both of them said it was the biggest one-day decline ever in the stock market. It isn't even the biggest in the last 21 years. It was the third. Now, it's a big story. It's important. But why would you not tell the truth about that? And it's because they've bought into the hype. The administration, just as it came up with a plan to focus on using the herd mentality, the gullibility, the lack of skepticism among the Washington press corps, and the way that most people there operate, which is on access to sources while ignoring a vibrant, rich public record of documents that will tell you what's going on, have understood how to play this to a fare thee well. And it's just astonishing to see that, having been so badly burned and embarrassed on the run-up to the war in Iraq, to the point where we now know that the government knew there were no weapons of mass destruction, you would have expected skepticism. After all, the first rule of journalism is check it out. And there was not checking here, there was advertising posing as news.
We're talking to David K. Johnston. David, before I go to the next excerpt of the debates last night, I wanted to ask you about this global